There we go. All right. So, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the regular meeting of the West Sacramento Port. The commission did meet in closed session. The port attorney, if you want to report out on that item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Port Commission did meet in closed session to confer with its real property negotiator concerning the Stone Lock property. There was no action taken.
Very good. All right. Thank you very much. So, to start off this evening, Commissioner Sandine, if you'll lead us in the pledge. Best. Okay, item 1 is presentations by public on matters that are not on the agenda but within the subject matter jurisdiction of the commission. We have no slips to speak this evening, so we'll move to consider item 2, which is consideration of approval of the May 6th commission meeting minutes.
I'll move the consent agenda.
So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Regular agenda items, item 3, consideration of port budget for fiscal year 2015-2016. Mr. Laurel.
Good evening, Chairman Villegas. So tonight we wanted to meet the port's annual requirement to provide a budget to the commission for consideration. You're going to notice that this will be similar to the format of last year's presentation. We're just going to go through a review of the port's performance over the last year, both mainly with a budgetary focus, but also just to highlight some of the things that happened over the course of the last year, and then we'll go into a review of the numbers from the previous fiscal year, and then a look ahead to the budget for fiscal year 15-16. No, it's doing that reverse. You have to do that. Sorry about that. Let me just get started. So during 14-15, the port entered the second year of its master lease with SSA. So it was the second full year of that lease. SSA is reporting profitability on that lease, which is a very good thing for everyone involved. They're obviously making their lease payments, but also they are, in the black on cargo. Their operating costs are significantly less than the port was experiencing when it was operating as the cargo operator. Also, we want to mention that we did have lower cargo numbers in general for the year. There were a few reasons for that. One was the drought and its effect on the rice industry, but also we didn't have quite the diversity of products that we had the year before. So cargo revenue was down, which meant for the port, we have a 25% share of revenue from the deal with SSA. We are projecting really a very small cargo share this year. I think we have about $5,000 in the budget based on that last ship they're supposed to get at the end of the fiscal year. But we expect next year to be a little better because there are a few ships lined up, and hopefully if cargo revenue stays stable, it won't be a repeat of this year. So hopefully you can sort of see this on your screens. We're working on getting the format right. But this was a report the Business Journal did back in April. I think it really tells the story of the new operating model for the port business plan. What they did is they just took our numbers and looked at the profit margin that the port has now under the new model versus what it had in the past. But I think the more telling statistic is the one in the second chart. If you look at the tonnage the port has actually seen over the last couple of years under the master lease, it hasn't gone up significantly from when we were operating the port. Yet our operating margin, our profit margin has been in the black. We've done 2 consecutive years with an operating profit. So I think this just shows you that the business model is working with the current arrangement with SSA. They're making money. The port's making money. We look at our job is just to make sure that trend continues, and hopefully SSA can only be more profitable as we go forward. So some of the other accomplishments that we had during the last year, we were able to secure additional grant funding for the Lake Washington cleanup project to do the next phase of that. A big accomplishment, which really, wasn't that exciting, but it means a lot in terms of the lease, the ability to lease property at the port. Site C, the one we call Site C, it's the property that is, if you're looking at from Terminal Street, it's the one on the left. It used to have the big dirt stockpile. It was Tyker, I believe. Tyker had a project in Davis. They moved the stockpile for that project at no cost to the port. And as a result of that, we're now able to work on a new lease for that property. And then, of course, we reached agreement with the state to acquire 4300 West Capitol. That's a strategic property for a number of reasons, but mainly because it ties in with the city's goals of relocating its courtyard. And we also made an option payment as we were required to do under the option for Stone Lock. So in terms of real estate, it was a productive year in advancing some strategic interest there. And I do want to give a lot of credit to Rick Toft. A lot of the items, or at least these 3 items, and a lot of the new leases that were able to offset the cargo revenue going down this year were the result of his hard work. So now going into the numbers, looking at fiscal year 14-15, revenue was just above $2 million. Our expenses came in at about $1.7 million. Expenses were very much stable from year to year. Revenue was up mainly because of new leases. So we were able to finish the year with an operating profit of about $378,000. That includes debt service, so that's all in costs of running the port. The revenue breakdown, and these numbers are just collapsed from the more detailed charts you have in your staff report. But the notable thing here is when we set on the new business model, we tried to put an emphasis on real estate, making that the primary source of income for the port as opposed to being reliant on cargo. So now I believe the number is like 98% is coming from real estate. We do have still the share of cargo and vessel environmental fees that we get from SSA. We did generate about $21,000 last year. And then the foreign trade zone is still the same as, there's 4 companies that pay annual license fees. Those don't really change from year to year, but it's just under $20,000. And then on the the expenses side, like I said, our operating costs are about the same as they were the previous year. Debt service was actually lower only because in 13-14 we made some significant payoffs to settling a debt with PG&E, and also the Sierra Northern rail loan that we had. We paid that off, so now we're actually getting revenue from that lease instead. So the summary from 14-15, basically bottom line is we made $378,000. We had a carryover from the previous fiscal year of just over $1 million, so we're finishing this year with a cash balance of just under $1.5 million. I did mention there were a couple of acquisitions that we did in terms of real estate. We're working on anyway. The Stone Lock option payment was about $375,000, and we're funding about $80,000 into escrow for the acquisition of 4300 West Capitol. So when you net that out, those are one-time expenses. We are projecting to carry over about $1 million into fiscal year 15-16. So now on to the budget for the next fiscal year, the proposed budget. We're projecting revenue to be about the same as last year. We have some expiring leases, but we have another couple that Rick has either renegotiated or extended to make up for the loss of the expiring leases. The expenses are generally about the same as last year. I'll go into some more detail on what's different. So we are projecting an operating profit this year of about $280,000. So real estate is about $50,000 lower, but that's only because, in the numbers you have in your report, it's only lower because we're projecting a conservative estimate for the Sierra Northern track lease. This year, we're projecting to net about $250,000 from that lease. In the budget, we're only estimating about $125,000. Storage, rail storage is really, it fluctuates a lot, but we do expect the number, the $125 that we have budgeted, to be at the low end of that projection. So hopefully that number will be higher. And then on the cargo side, just given what we went through this year and not seeing an end in sight for the challenges created with the drought, we are projecting a lower amount for cargo and vessel environmental fees. But as I mentioned, just looking at the ship traffic that's scheduled and looking at if everything else stays stable, we should see an increase in that. But for budgeting purposes, we're assuming a conservative estimate. And then there's no change to the foreign trade zone. On the expense side, our expenses are about $24,000 higher. That accounts for a few things. Mainly, when we did the new lease agreement, we weren't exactly sure how our utility share, or our cost of utilities would play out. We now have a better handle on that. It's actually, we were under what is coming in at the actuals, and so we adjusted utility costs upward. Our storm and groundwater management costs are a little higher than they were, not in the past, but higher than we had budgeted in the past. So we're right-sizing that budget this year. And we're also proposing a couple of salary adjustments. One is an adjustment to the port business manager position. The other is taking a senior clerk position from 75% time to full-time. And that position helps the port with a lot of the administrative functions. And then on debt service, there's really no change. I will mention that the 3 remaining sources of debt the port has, one is the Taylor Village reimbursement. That is set to be paid off in 2016-17, so we're just a couple years away from having that one off the books. The remaining sources are the iBank loan and the loan to the city. So once Taylor Village is paid, that number will reduce to about $300,000 and some change between the remaining 2 sources. So like I said, the operating profit projection for the next fiscal year is about $280,000. Adding that to the carryover balance from this year, we are projecting to end 15-16 at just under $1.3 million. This is in your report, but I want to just highlight it in terms of the long-term projection. This looks out actually beyond the term of the SSA, the initial 5-year period. So it assumes that they're going to renew their lease for another 5 years. So in terms of the 5-year projection, you can see that it's fairly stable. The debt service number, like I mentioned, goes down to $383,000 in year 3. And so that has a corresponding increase in operating profit. You'll notice real estate revenue is trending downward, but that's only because we're not projecting extensions of leases that expire in 17-18. We'd like to be in a position at that point to be able to even develop some of those properties. So it might not be a lease, or it might be a much different lease that's hopefully accompanied by a development project. So it is a conservative estimate. We can always work on additional storage leases, but it was never the plan to make those long term. So that's why it's only showing for the next 3 years. And so the bottom line, you can see that the operating profit is pretty stable, and of course then the end of year balance is on the right trend going upward. So really it comes down to real estate leases, making their payments and everything remaining in place. The port should be good for the foreseeable future. In terms of some of the opportunities, I mentioned that there may be some possibility through the transaction of 4300 West Capitol with the city to eliminate some of the debt, or potentially all the debt to the city. We're also working on reducing other operating costs. Insurance has been the one that has escaped us for a few years, but it's a big number. It's other than personnel, it's our highest cost. Rick really did a good job pursuing that over the course of the last about 6 months, and we are on a path now to reduce our insurance costs by about 10%. It's a modest number, but it results in about $30,000-$40,000 in savings for next year. And then, of course, there's also significant opportunity to raise revenue through real estate, both through additional leases. Site C is now open. We hope to get a tenant on there soon, and like I mentioned, there's plenty of opportunity to develop property, both at the North Terminal and Seaway, potentially Stone Lock later on. So lots of reason for optimism on the real estate side. We do have a few challenges I've noted here, the main one being the closure of the Agrium facility. They do have an active lease with the port. We're not sure yet, talking to Agrium, if they plan to continue that lease. It does, from our viewpoint, it adds a lot of value to their property. Not easy to get a private lease of the channel. So we're hopeful that they'll at least maintain the lease agreement with the port while they work on selling their property to a new user. We talked about the drought having an impact on the cargo business, but in terms of the relationship we have with SSA, we're insulated from that because we get only our share. We're not dependent on cargo revenue. And then finally, maintenance or deferred maintenance is still a risk that we need to point out. When certain things break at the port, it is on us to fix them. And so if we have a big ticket item, that could pose a short-term challenge to the port. So just need to be mindful of that. So that concludes our presentation. Rick and I are here for questions. Thanks.
All right, does the commission have any questions?
Yeah, Aaron, are there any opportunities to enhance the foreign trade zone revenue?
You know, we looked really closely at that when we first initiated the new operating model, and it was really a struggle. We went out to the Northern California World Trade Center and actually talked to them about maybe taking it over, since they have connections to companies that may be able to utilize it. And really what it came down to, and Rick can speak to this as well, is it's a very unique set of circumstances that make it work for companies. And so what we found is they tend to find us when it's a possibility. That's not to say we could be more proactive in marketing it, but ultimately we weighed the costs of that effort versus the return, and just felt that our focus was better put on things like real estate.
Yeah, my understanding is they don't necessarily have to be contiguous with port property. You could have a foreign trade zone in Roseville, for example.
That's correct.
The market's really limited to large importers, and as Aaron mentioned, those people understand the benefits of the zone, and they'll find us.
Assembly type businesses, yeah, it's really, yeah.
Right.
Now, we did, through that process at least, get it on the radar of some of our partner organizations like the World Trade Center, that, you know, the program's there, they know where to find us. So if there is any, or are any leads that come up, we would jump on it if we get the opportunity. But, you know, we actually are also fixed in terms of how much we can charge. We did look at that in terms of, can we increase what we already get, or if we did a relationship with the World Trade Center, could we raise the fee so that we still get the share that we get now? And there's some limitations on what we can charge as well.
All right, thanks.
Commissioner Ball.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. A couple of questions. Is the port's share of our executive director's compensation, is that in the port contribution, the CEO ED contribution line, or is that in the personnel line?
That's in the first one. It's in the port CEO/ED manager contribution.
And it's
So-
updated to reflect, that accounts for the city's, change in compensation this is a share of the city, essentially of the city manager?
Yeah, it's not based on a percentage, I guess is the best way to answer that. It was, I believe it's the same number as we had last year. So to answer the question, no, it was not adjusted for that. Maybe Phil can. Okay, Phil's saying it is a percentage, so.
Yeah, I thought we were buying a portion of time for our executive director, so just whether or not this number reflects whether it's been updated to match the compensation
Right.
package for the executive director.
Yeah, we'll double check that.
Good evening. I know, Commissioner, that I don't know if the number reflects it correctly, because I have not, we'll have to check that, but I know in the budget document, it is written as a percentage of his salary. So we'll double check that the number got translated that way.
And similarly, is the on the personnel item, is that just forecasting out some sort of CPI percentage, or is it accounting for the changes in PERS contributions and the other drivers of personnel costs for that we face?
No, it's I can't remember the exact percentage. I think it might be a 2% or something like that. But it's just a.
It looks like the same percentage that's
Right.
applied in travel and other categories, and I'm not sure from my experience at the city that's necessarily the optimal escalator to be.
We're comfortable with the number for this year. So I think in terms of the long term, we can take a closer look at that to make sure that we're accounting for the trends and things you mentioned, like pension and healthcare, that sort of thing.
Okay.
But the number for 15-16 is the number that we, the correct budgeted number.
Then on the debt service piece, for the, again, not for 15, 16, but for, in 17, 18, there's an uptick in the debt service payments to the city.
Right.
What's the, I know what we owe, but what's the derivation of exactly the 80,000 and, you know,
Yeah,
200
so-
and something bucks?
So the agreement with the city, the amortization schedule that we have, it's a 5-year interest-only payment that we're in right now. And in 17, 18, it amortizes fully for 20 years. So right now it's interest-only, so when you add in the principal, that brings it up to 144, and then it goes another 20 years out from there.
And that's both on the general fund loan and the clawback?
That's correct.
Okay. I mean, we have this period in 27-18 because of the Taylor Village payoff, where we may have some additional flexibility. And keeping in mind, the city we entered into those arrangements with the city essentially to keep us the general fund loan to keep us alive, and the clawback as we had to as well. Not because the city was treating it as a kind of a market-based loan to us. And so, although, I mean, I think we're within our legal rights to extend it as long as possible. If we are running an operating profit and we are no longer having the Taylor Village debt service to pay, I would be, at least I'd be interested in accelerating our repayment to the city. Just as a matter of, the loan was given to us in good faith to keep us afloat. And the city never would have done that in a way just as a way to provide financing. And I feel like we ought to respond in kind. I don't mean moving $300,000, bumping it up by $300,000 necessarily. I don't want to take our operating profit down to zero. But I do think we ought to be looking at a faster repayment of that obligation. And I know we've got the transaction and the transfer with respect to the courtyard and some other issues as well, but both for the good faith to the city and also to get us as debt-free as we can, given our margins, I think would be well served. So again, it doesn't change the 2015-16 budget, but in terms of as we're looking towards building the out years.
Any other questions by the commission? Thank you very much, Ms. Laurel. So you need a motion? So we're just receiving the presentation, no motion needed? Is that right?
Actually, we are asking that the commission adopt the budget.
All right, so adopting the budget, so we're looking for a motion? So we have a motion.
I'll second.
And a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously, so thank you very much for that. So that moves us to general administration, which is commission reports. Are there any reports by the commission? Seeing none, then we ask.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Chairman, tomorrow we're hosting the mayor of, is it Iksan?
Iksan City?
Iksan City in Korea, here at the board in the city. So just FYI, I'm only mentioning it now because this is our order of agenda, but it flows from what I assume will be our executive director's report on his Asia trip as well. So,
Perfect timing. So CEO report?
Okay, and I apologize for the AC.
Feels good.
Phil's working on this. Jack Murphy will hopefully turn this off in time for our council meeting. But two things. We did return back from Korea and Japan. The Erskine City mayor will be here tomorrow to meet with our mayor to discuss their food hub effort. They call it Foodpopolis there. I had sent some background to the council members on that. There's just an initial meeting to see if there are any common interests, potentially discuss an MOU between our city and theirs. They do have an interest in linking more and more to UC Davis, and then when they saw that we had a Global Food Hub initiative, the mayor happened to be in Los Angeles today and rearranged his schedule so he could meet with us tomorrow. I also wanted to touch base on the memo you have on water conservation. The port has done an extraordinary effort there with a 60% reduction since the beginning of the year, although there is a blip for the month of May where we had an 18% increase, but Rick is on that. Apparently it's a water valve issue that we'll be able to take care of with a few $100s and get it back on a loading. Also, just to put that in perspective, 60% reduction at the port. Later tonight we'll talk about the city's efforts, and for the month of May there was a 70% reduction in the city's own use of water, primarily parks. Overall, the city is at a 38% reduction, and we'll go over that a little bit more tonight. 38% when our goal is 28%.
Congratulations, very good. Yes, good news. All right, that concludes our formal agenda. Are there any other comments, questions? If not, we're looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, motion to second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much.